Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're catching this on replay, welcome. It's been a minute. It's been more than a minute since I have been live with you. I'm excited to talk to you today. I missed y'all. So I'm live right now on Facebook, our Facebook group, and on our YouTube channel. And if this is your first time here, my name is Mo James. I am a certified confidence coach and the founder of the Confetti Collective. And what we offer here at the Confetti Collective is confidence coaching for women like you, women who are looking to discover themselves on a deeper level and unlearn what we've been taught and what we've been assigned, and really figure out who you are and what you're here to do in this world, and living your life with the filter of your confidence being intact. So I'm excited to be here with you. Like I said, it's been a long time. It's been some weeks since I've been live with you. And the conversation that we're going to have today is going to get into what's been going on and where I've been. So I really am excited to be back with you all today, to have this conversation. So I have been out of the loop, off of social media, for probably about 6 weeks, maybe a little more, um, because my family has really been in a season of grief over the past few months, actually. Compounded grief, grief that has been piling up on top of itself. And the last we've been mourning the losses of some family members, and the last family member that passed away was my father. And so, needless to say, I stepped away from everything and really went into mourning, which is to be expected, and self-reflection, and a lot of transitioning has been happening over the past couple of weeks. And at the same time, things have been springing forth in and around my life. And that is what I want to talk about today. Um, I want to talk about the possibility that you can be grieving and be growing in the same season. So, if you listen to the previous episode of our Confident Women Glow podcast, uh, I talked about what confidence has to do with grief, and shared some of my experiences of going through this process, of grieving my dad, and having to do things and make decisions, and take actions that I've never taken before, have conversations that I've never had before, make decisions that I've never had to make before. And so I recognized that the only reason I believe that I have been going through this process without absolutely losing my mind is because my confidence was acted as a sense of grounding for me. It gave me a sense of being planted and supported and shored up by something. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I encourage you to listen to it, um, because again, in this season that I am in, and you might be into, and we're going to talk about what that might look like for you. Grief and growth have both been on my doorstep at the same time. I've been saying goodbyes and hellos at the same time in the same season. And I think this is an important conversation because, especially when we have these conversations among women where we're talking about personal growth and self discovery and all of these things and empowerment, we often focus only on what is new, right? We focus and we talk about and we get really hyped up about becoming the newest and glowiest versions of ourselves, right? We talk about all of the new things. We don't often talk about the things that we might have to say goodbye to in order to get to the new things. So while I was kind of thinking about this conversation, I remembered a conversation that I had probably, this is easily a year and a half ago, maybe early in the pandemic. I interviewed a grief recovery specialist, and one of the major takeaways from that conversation, she said that grief is our response to change, any type of change. Basically, grief occurs whenever we say goodbye to something. That could be a loved one, that could be a job, that could be, I don't know, the only place you've ever lived, that could be a relationship. We experience grief anytime, um, anytime we react to change. Grief is a reaction or response to change. So, for those of you that are watching or listening, you might be thinking, well, you know what, Mo, I haven't had, any serious losses in my family or things like that. And I want to offer you that it doesn't mean you may not be grieving something. I was thinking about when when I joined the military, um, and I got through basic training and I got to my duty station. I was in Monterey, California. I mean, a place that coming from South Carolina, like only ever living in one place, to be to find myself on the other side of the country, and it was sunshine and it was the beach and it was palm trees. It was California. It was beautiful. And I remember probably for the first 2 months that I was there, the only time I came out of my room was to go to class, to go to PT, and to get something to eat. The rest of the time I spent in my room. I didn't do any of the fun things with my fellow soldiers. I didn't hang out. I stayed in my room. I slept a lot. And I realized that I was grieving. Thinking back on that time, I realized I was grieving. I was grieving the loss of the change of location. I was no longer with my family. I was by myself. I was in this new space. I was learning how to be a soldier. I was learning a new language. I was meeting new people. There was a lot of new things in my life, but I was grieving what I didn't have anymore. And so you might be listening to this and thinking, well, what could I be grieving? Like I said already, you could be, maybe you left a job that you've had for a long time and you had loved that job. Maybe you left a relationship that had been in your had you that you had been in. And when I say relationship, I mean um, romantic relationship or platonic relationship, a friendship, a friend group ship, a situation ship, an entanglement ship, whatever it is, you know, maybe that's gone. Maybe you moved away from a place where you lived for a really long time and you had planted roots and now that's gone. You you might be responding to any of those types of changes. Maybe your child moved out. Your child started their life and now you're grieving the fact that you don't have anybody in the house to take care of anymore. In addition to what we normally expect when we talk about grief, the loss of a loved one. And so if you are in a season, you recognize you might be grieving something, a change, that a major change that has happened in your life. It might feel wrong for you to admit that you're growing because you know that there are probably expectations of what your grieving is supposed to look like. Right around the time that my dad first got sick, I found myself having conversations that I had never had before related to my business. I signed a new contract. Some of you all know that in addition to being a confidence coach through this brand, I have a social media content agency where we create content for businesses, and I found myself having conversations and signing contracts and having to hire new people and taking on more work, and at the same time looking at this brand through new eyes, and redefining how we show up in the world, and saying yes to opportunities. So there was a lot of growth happening at the same time that I was grieving. And like I said, it might feel weird. You might feel wrong. It might feel inappropriate to think about or to celebrate growth when you are grieving. What I want to offer you is that you have capacity to hold space for both. You have capacity to be grieving and be growing in the same season, because that is real life. That is what happens. We see as the seasons change, plant life dies and new plant life grows. We see it happen all around us. Why expect that it wouldn't also be happening in our lives when it happens all the time around our lives, right? You might feel conflicted when what seems like two opposite situations existing in the same space at the same time. You think of grief, you think of things dying or having to say goodbye or having to let things go. You think of growth and you think of new and welcomes and hellos. And so I understand that it could feel awkward or weird or wrong to to acknowledge that you are in a season of both, because you w- we want to be able to be clear about what's happening and to be identifying what's happening in our lives to give us an illusion of control, right? But what if grief and growth aren't conflicts? What if there is no conflict? What if grief and growth shows up in concert? What if while grief is playing in the percussion section, growth is playing in the woodwind section? What if both are existing, can exist in your life together? And I'm saying what if, and the point of this conversation is to already know what the answer is. It's possible. It is possible. You can grieve and grow in the same season. And if we want to really be honest, endings are necessary in order for beginnings to begin. We watch flowers die at the end of summer and new things grow in fall. There's a quote that came to mind when I was thinking about this conversation from Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist. And he says, if you are brave enough to say goodbye, life will reward you with a new hello. And I love that quote, one, because it talks about the cyclical nature of life. That's just what it is. It is very cyclical. And it also, I also don't want to imply that saying goodbye to things will be easy. It won't. There will be things that you will say goodbye to in your life that you will mourn for the rest of your life. I still have moments where I think about my dad, or I think about my uncle, or I think about my cousins, and just start crying for no reason. Not even no reason, just out of the blue. I'm not implying that grieving is easy. I am not implying that grieving is a 5-minute process. It's not. It comes and goes, and then it comes back, and then it goes again, and then it comes back, and then it goes again. What I'm saying is, even even in the season of grief, you can also hold space to welcome new things, to welcome growth, to welcome your you discovering yourself on a different or deeper level, to welcome new relationships, to welcome new conversations, to welcome new habits, to welcome new love or new joy or new abundance into your life. You have the capacity for both. That is what I want to leave you with in this conversation. You can grieve and grow in the same season. That's just the reality of life. And I believe that when you can acknowledge both, it allows you to give yourself more grace. It allows you to be in flow with whatever life is bringing, and not to be fighting against it, right? Not to be forcing anything, but to be in flow with everything, with everything. Because if we want to be in flow with the hellos and the good things and the new things that will come, the other side of that coin is being in flow with the goodbyes that we'll have to endure, or the breakups that we'll have to go through, um, or the losses that we'll have to grieve. It's We have no control anyway. So we can choose to be in flow with those things. So that's what I wanted to share with you all today. I do want to thank you, every single one of you, who commented or sent me a text or called or sent an email. I appreciate you for your condolences and for your well wishes and for your prayers. And I hope that if you have heard something in this conversation that resonates with you, maybe you just recognized that you have been grieving something. And I hope that you will give yourself the room to also recognize that you could be growing as well. Trent, as you move through grief, you will be changed. And in my opinion, those changes will be reflected in who you become. So to not acknowledge how grief has changed you almost refuses the growth that the season's trying to give you. And that's not what I want for any of us. Give yourself all the space and time you need to grieve. And then also give yourself all the space and time you need to grow as well. So I appreciate you all for tuning in. Welcome. We have several new people that have connected with us, and I'm excited for you to be here. You'll be able to listen to this episode also on our Confident Women Glow podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to your podcast. But I would love to hear from you, those of you that are in a season of grief like mine or grief of a different flavor. It's still grief. And let's decide that we're going to give ourselves the grace and the room to also be growing. We owe that to ourselves. So thank you all so much for listening, for tuning in. I'll catch you later. Bye.